It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Kirsten Miller. Kirsten is the Executive Director of EcoCity Builders. EcoCity Builders is based in the San Francisco Bay Area of California, from where Kirsten speaks to us today. And you can follow Kirsten on Twitter with the handle @EcoCityBuilder. Kirsten's full contact details will be displayed later.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. I'm very happy to be joining you and everyone today for this webinar. So I'll get right into it, and then I look forward to the discussion afterwards and learning some more about your practices and your experiences, and maybe share a little information with you. So today I want to share with you how we are using data and mapping techniques driven by inclusive and participatory data development processes to help support the creation of sustainable cities and neighborhoods with increased resilience to the impacts of climate change. So the goals that were included in the introductory emails are to promote a new interdisciplinary approach to urban data management and data visualization that can inform local action and support community-led strategies for urban sustainability and climate resilience. A little bit about EcoCity Builders, my organization. We're a USA-based nonprofit, as Derek mentioned, located in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we provide advocacy, consulting, and education in sustainable city planning and design. In this slide, you can see some of the places where we've been working lately, using the methods and tools for data-driven cities that I'm going to be talking more about today. So, as most of you already know very well, and according to UN Habitat, cities use 78% of the world's energy and produce 60% of CO2 and greenhouse gases. So as humans multiplying on the planet over the years, we've been increasingly self-organizing and interacting with a network of systems, or cities, that require massive inputs. These systems, created by us, in turn interact with the biosphere, influencing areas now far beyond their own physical limits. So really, in short, we now live on a planet of cities where the effects of our urbanization and climate change are increasingly converging. Cities and towns, as we know now, are very vulnerable to climate change events and impacts. So, and according to the C40, 70% of cities are already dealing with the effects of climate change, and nearly all are at risk. The financial effects of climate change can also be quite devastating, and unexpected costs from storm, floods, fires, and drought can lead to major disruptions in business operations and city budgets. Our current model of urbanization, then, is causing massive disruption to itself and its life-sustaining systems. So we need a new climate-resilient and sustainable model of urbanism to rapidly take hold. And I know, and you know, that we've all been saying this for a number of years, but yes, it's still extremely important that we continue pressing forward. We in EcoCity Builders define an ecocity as an ecologically healthy human settlement modeled on the self-sustaining, resilient structure and function of natural ecosystems and living organisms. So far, though, we've not been building ecocities, and now the way we build and live has to shift in order to address these global and now local challenges. But how do we know what to build? So we in EcoCity Builders sort of dialed back and started to look at what is the baseline, what are the basic needs? Well, no matter where we live and who we are all human beings, and all humans need safe and affordable housing, clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, nutritious food, access to education and gainful employment, good governance, and a sense of well-being and purpose. Of course, depending on the place, the form and the delivery of these services will vary and are conditional on things like climate, culture, economy, and other characteristics. But fortunately, the elements and features that distinguish healthy, prosperous, and happy cities and citizens are the exact same characteristics of low-carbon, climate-resilient eco-cities. And this slide just shows a snapshot of the eco-city framework that we're working on. You can find out more about that at www.ecocitystandards.org. So really, we already have all the necessary abilities and skills required to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and address climate change while simultaneously dealing with other urban environmental problems like pollution, waste, transportation, housing, jobs, and quality of life. We already know how to build eco-cities. The challenge, though, is in how to address those topics in the beginning, the priorities of aligning urban infrastructure with eco-city and climate change action. And it all comes down then to what we actually build. And that really comes down to our priorities, our values, and our motives. At this time, typically, most urban infrastructure projects are of a supply nature. So that is, they're focused on the supply of a service rather than a reduction in the demand for a service. And this typically encourages the more excessive use rather than the efficient use of the service, which is counter to sustainable development and climate resilience. So our approach to sustainable development involves both reducing the demand and then providing efficient and effective supply. You see on this slide some Sankey diagrams, and they're showing different flows and uses of water. And we're using increasingly these types of meta diagrams with our pilot city partners to convey many aspects of a system, of an urban system, to people of diverse backgrounds. And typically, a meta diagram is constructed to reflect the substances, processes, and time periods relevant to specific decisions. So they're a great tool for scenario development. The resource flow meta diagrams that are looping and cascading, more of like the ones on the left and right, are getting more value out of any one resource flow. So the goal is to get more use in the demand section with looping and cascading while shrinking the amount you're taking from nature and returning to nature. Then something important to keep in mind when we're talking about assessing urban conditions is that we need to be very granular. We need to disaggregate and break down these analyses. And so it's important to note that cities are made up of groups of people that are typically organized into neighborhoods or districts. The neighborhood is then the nexus of integration of urban systems within the larger area that represents the center of a citizen's, what some call life radius. And that's a 20-mile area where most people spend about 80% of their time. And as such, it's a good starting point for urban transformation that is based on citizen participation. And then just one layer on top of that, speaking of urban transformation, at this time, we're also witnessing an era of rather unprecedented technological change, which some people are calling the fourth industrial revolution. And this revolution is underpinned by rapid advances in artificial intelligence, robotics, and the Internet of Things, to name a few. So some of these higher or more intense types of technology are already deeply integrated into people's lives, into people's homes, into the neighborhoods, more or less, and as some areas lack almost all of these things. So you'll see as I move ahead that we work in both types of areas. The underlying idea then of the first generation of urban ecologists that I would say sprang up in the 1970s was this idea of the fusion of urban planning, ecology, and public participation to help design and build healthier cities. So this still holds true, but now it needs to advance alongside the new technologies and innovations that have been integrated and embedded into our social fabric with the rise of this new industrial era. So we can now add renewable energy and energy storage technologies, new platform technologies like supply chain and customization, 3D printing, open source manufacturing, last mile deliveries, telehealth and virtual medicine, and even blockchain technology that could eliminate the need for middleman platforms. So our process when we work with our partner cities is something like a startup for eco-cities. And we structure each project similar to a startup. We get teams of people collaborating on projects and working towards a common goal. But we need to get motivated, as it all takes a lot of really thoughtful participation. So it's helpful for us to think about what motivates people and to understand that each neighborhood, each person in each city has a really unique identity. However, groups of people are typically motivated by similar drives, including status, relationships, mastery, and ownership. And I'll throw in a pop quiz here if anyone at the end can identify the map on this slide. It's a trick question. So the way that we sort of bring everyone together in this startup process, idea of activating eco-city development and participation, is a step-by-step process that gets everyone to the table and their data through an educational program that offers a suite of urban system research and training modules, including a customizable set of lectures and seminars, labs, and workshops. All of the materials emphasize a participatory action research framework. Here I just popped in a slide to show you an example of the curriculum being adapted. I think this curriculum is being adapted by Medellin, the city of Medellin in Colombia. So we have, right now our curriculum is in English and Spanish language, but we hope to continue to keep adapting it to additional languages. But every pilot city that adapts this and implements it, we together go through it and create a very custom version of these materials. But they're all based on this participatory action research framework. And really at the core, this seeks to understand and improve the world by changing it. So at its heart is collective and a self-reflective inquiry process that researchers and participants undertake. They understand and improve upon the practices in which they're participating and the situations in which they find themselves. In other words, the way we work is we're trying to improve the quality of life in neighborhoods and cities. The process, though, really is directly linked to action, and it's influenced by understanding the history, the culture, and very importantly, the local context embedded in social relationships. This process we call peer-to-peer urbanism, and it yields these essential metrics, the knowledge and the platforms for understanding the relationship between nature, culture, and the built environment in order to facilitate the transition towards a healthier, more equitable city. And these steps can be taken sequentially or adapted accordingly. So they don't always, well, 1 and 2 always happen first, but the other ones could be shuffled around a bit. Here is an example of some of the mapping work. This one is a neighborhood archetype map under development for Medellin, Colombia. We're using top-down authoritative data and combining that with the citizen-sourced community data to understand neighborhoods and their conditions, their similarities and their differences. So as part of building these visualizations in the maps, we have to request and gather the tabular spatial data sets needed to be sourced and organized into a database. The top-down data is municipal, regional, state, or province-wide data sets collected for categories of biophysical spatial data, cadastral, infrastructural spatial data, socioeconomic, environmental, and resource consumption data. We are then providing the pilot city partners with this foundation of natural and built form, upon which we then work with them to build, to fill in the pieces, to build the picture of social environmental data. Now, the data sets don't necessarily need to be sourced sequentially. However, it could mean that as we're working, the pilot city team members are moving in tandem with separate data collection goals. So as we go about the process, participants that are typically activated with these EcoCompass training materials in partnership with a university that's offering this process as a university level course. The participants then are researching and assessing the resource demands and flows depending on what the community has decided is their priority as the start. It could be water, it could be energy, waste materials, food, or mobility, typically. They can then better understand where the city or the neighborhood resources come from and where they're going at what amount. And this gives a holistic picture of the role everyone plays in resource cycles. It also helps you better understand where the opportunities are to reduce demand and increase efficiency, and where you could shift over to healthier or more sustainable sources and end up with more reuse, recycling, more circular use of resources, and then a healthier downstream output in the sink. The basis of this method of what we call urban metabolic information systems that we're developing, we're basing it on a concept that was developed by Dr. Sebastian Moffat in a project that he worked on with the World Bank called Eco2 Cities. And we worked with Sebastian initially to align these concepts with our more participatory bottom-up neighborhood approach, and now we've continued to adapt it. But I just want to acknowledge Dr. Moffat for coming up with this 5-partition way to analyze these flows, which we find is very useful. I wanted to show you just another quick example of some mapping work that's been done by another one of our partner cities, Cusco. And you can see they're working in 2 different neighborhood archetypes. One is a traditional neighborhood, historic neighborhood, and one is a informal area. The Camino Real on the left is a unplanned informal area that previously had been unmapped before we started working in Cusco. So now they've mapped that area, they've included it in the city's database too, and they're continuing to add more information to that and to share these results with the community there. We use different types of data depending on where we're working and what's available and what's needed. So these are some of the types of data that we could be using depending on what our priorities are. If a priority is to, for example, address air quality, then we'll use sensors. If our purpose is to assess a baseline of quality of life, then we'll do a qualitative survey. And we typically always do this when we start out. But the geospatial data are really at the core of what we're developing, because we really base a lot of our work on developing maps and using them with our partners. So I wanted to go into an example of one of the pilot city experiences, and I decided to pick Cairo because it was a really great project, and we still work with these partners today. In fact, one of them is on our board of directors, Dr. Sahar Atia, but also because it was a project with Eye on Earth, and it was a really great experience. So I decided to pick Cairo as our example. And within Cairo, we were focusing on an informal area called Imbaba, which is near the Nile and also sort of near the center of Cairo. We partnered with Cairo University on this project and their Department of Engineering and Architecture. And the lead professor was Dr. Heba Khalil. So the types of data that we were collecting with the community, and we worked very closely with a CBO, a citizen-based organization, to be introduced to the community, to set up these data collection events, to understand what the concerns and the priorities were, and to create an iterative process of working together. And so we were doing what we called boot camp activities, where we got together with the community to talk about the issues, set up the project, and collect data. We were testing water because that was their first primary concern about the resource use and the quality, especially of water, drinking water. We did quality of life questionnaires, and we did parcel audits, which are the driver of those resource flow metadiagrams. So just showing you a snapshot of us in the neighborhood there, talking to people and asking, administering quality of life surveys. You could see some of the sectors and questions and analysis from this that came out of these surveys, and the table on the right comes from a paper that was published of the research results by Dr. Khalil and Dr. Atia. Then we did the water quality assessments and tests, and you can see some of the samples and results at the bottom. We were testing for different additives in the water. We did find some that were alarming, and it sort of sparked a dialogue with the water utility that probably wouldn't have happened without this project providing the structure and the process for that to take place. This is an example of the parcel audit workbook for water. What we do is we do a sampling of the study area, and we sample a number of households, so we get a statistically sound sampling of the area of different types of households and different types of buildings. So these types of questions that we're asking the households are that middle section that says demand for water. And then through the research that the students or participants in the project are doing, they're linking those demands to their upstream sources and their downstream destinations. Here you can see an example of one of the Sankey diagrams that was created for Cairo. And you can see that the Nile River is the main source of water, and there is not very much or any reuse or recycling of water. So it showed you also on the right the very dense built environment that is the urban fabric. Part of the research outcomes were discussing ways that water could be reused because it's expensive. And that was then one of the goals of the project, was to research those options and opportunities. So some of the conclusions from the Mbaba project, and I'm going to pull directly from the research report and paper that was published by Dr. Atia and Dr. Khalil. They concluded that the urban metabolism investigations has a potential to influence the sustainability of these kinds of districts and neighborhoods. And the study demonstrated that there was a big problem in consumption of resources, mainly water in the case of Mbaba. And they felt that this necessitated a prompt response from the stakeholders on different levels. Of course, water scarcity is a global growing problem everywhere, but it's accentuated in Egypt given its limited water resources and the diminishing share of the Nile River water. So they felt that if the results of the field study are aggregated to encompass more informal areas in Cairo, the water consumption or depletion would be quite alarming. So there is a need to address this issue both on the policy level side and on the local level of district plans. Also, they concluded that personal behavior is vital in this issue. So common practices of water use and overconsumption and also illegal encroachment on the water network should be reconsidered. The problem they felt of the water situation was well communicated through the tools used, including the GIS, the Urban Metabolic Information Systems, the diagrams, and the maps and charts that came out of the research. And moreover, they felt that the partnership between the different stakeholders provided a good platform for promoting the methodology and the results into tailoring locally appropriate solutions that were both affordable and require minimum capacities for maintenance. The study of other resources they felt would also provide insights to minimize consumption and promote looping and cascading to maximize the urban metabolism and the quality of life in these informal areas. They also concluded that the studies in urban metabolism would assist in providing design and planning guidelines for developing more responsive and vibrant communities that address local needs. So as a conclusion, and just to wrap up this part of the presentation, the example of Cairo is just one story of using its materials. And each pilot city that we've been working with has a unique story that's also quite interesting, but I don't really have time to share all of these stories with you. If you would like to know more, though, I'm happy to follow up with more information about some of these other implementations in places like Peru and Colombia, Argentina, Central America, Morocco. We did a little bit of work with Abu Dhabi earlier, and some in the US and Canada too. But one of the things, while we're working very hyper locally, we're also at the same time always having an eye to the global. And some of our work is with organizations like UN environment programs, Global Initiative for Resource Efficient Cities, for example. So we are trying to always link these actions, city indicators, and neighborhood priorities with sustainable development goals and more global processes, and try to also, when we have a successful implementation of a pilot process, to link that and press for a policy that can help us then start to accelerate the transformation. So next steps for this type of work, we are looking to update this set of training modules and materials. We started working on them several years ago, but we really want to overhaul them, add a couple more techniques and technologies. One is that I feel is exciting is to be able to spatially show these resource flows. And so we're in the middle of trying to raise funds and trying to complete that process of having the spatial visualization of the Sankey diagrams that I was showing you before. So we want to retool, refine these tools and processes also so that they're much easier to access. And one of those ways that we're looking to make that happen is to centralize them online and expand them so that the materials are available to a wide audience. We have a goal of having all of the modules and the different implementations or customizations of these materials as almost like a wiki that would be part of this centralized resource. But the long-term goal is, or why we want to do all that, is because what we're seeing and what is needed and what other people are also doing, that this is just one expression of practitioners forming a network, multi-stakeholder data partners and end users working with a specific set of tools and methods to assess performance and take action. So we feel that because what we're seeing successfully happen with these smaller pilots is that they could be happening in many more places, and they could be strengthened through this type of network effect that I feel is one of the great things that this Eye on Earth program is doing with Derek and everyone to provide a platform as well. So we definitely want to stay involved with Eye on Earth and to learn from and contribute hopefully to the network, and then to also build this platform that we can share with the network partners. So that is my last slide, this one. Thank you so much. I look forward to discussing any questions you have and maybe learning some more about what you're doing in your practice through the questions or any comments that you might have. We do have a fundraiser. If you're interested, we're participating in Giving Tuesday, which is November 28th. And you can find out more just by going to our website. And if you want to participate, you can click on the donate button. But Derek, I guess I'll hand it back to you and see what we are going to talk about next in the question and answer part.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. Before we head into the questions and answers section, I would like to hand over to a representative of the Eye on Earth Alliance to respond to Kirsten. And today's Alliance spokesperson is a long-term friend of Eye on Earth, Bill Sontag, from the Secretariat of the Group on Earth Observations. Bill speaks to us today from the United States. So as for Kirsten, we extend our great appreciation to Bill for being with us during this Thanksgiving holiday period. So Bill, if you just like to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Derek, and thank you for putting up that very scary photo of me. I want to thank Kirsten for her presentation. We very much appreciate the work that she's doing and her cooperation, as was noted in the MENA region in Cairo with the work of EcoCity Builders and the Eye on Earth group. We haven't heard a lot from Kristen lately, but we're very happy to see EcoCity Builders working in particular at a community level to help organize a ground-up approach to sustainability. I think the thing we're seeing, as many of us kind of look forward to 2018, is that that's the direction that we're going to have to really go to achieve some of the sustainability goals of the UN 2030 Development Agenda and elsewhere, delivering information products at a community and urban level to assist communities reach their goals, get what they need to get done, whether it's water supply or otherwise, within the communities. I just want to take one moment and mention a presentation that we heard during our recent GeoPlenary, Group on Earth Observations plenary in Washington, D.C., and that was from Dr. Peter Head talking about the Ecological Sequestration Trust's Resilience Brokers Program. You can Google either of those. Again, Ecological Sequestration Trust or Resilience Brokers, and find out some more about work that's being done to organize finances to help get some of the things done that Kirsten is talking about and others, again, are attempting to do at the urban and community level. So, again, our thanks, and I know, Derek, you'll help with the question session coming up right now. Thanks again.
Thank you, Bill. So now we indeed turn to the questions to Kirsten. Dr. Ahmed Madavi.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. I am, it's some years that I'm following the urban agriculture, and last year we had a visit also in the master and the sustainable city in United Arab Emirates. How much important is in resiliency of cities, the urban agriculture. There are lots of food production activities in cities. And that's my question really, that how much in the future of cities we have to develop it, or is kind of, a controlled environment as it is in United Arab Emirates also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, which I understand is what is the importance of urban agriculture in future sustainable and resilient cities. And I definitely feel that it is critical, and it is a very difficult and challenging problem, along with many others that we're facing. But of course, if we're unable to feed ourselves, that definitely won't work. Most people are moving to cities. Also, at the same time, many of the agricultural areas are being impacted by climate change. So the growing seasons, the types of crops, the availability of food stocks that are maybe culturally typically used in an area, all these things are definitely pressing concerns. So the development of urban agriculture is going to be important, and I see in the work that we're doing, it's something that is definitely being addressed, especially in the lower income informal areas, because they're actively trying to figure out how to access food. And one of the projects that I was unable to show was a project in Cusco in Peru, and their topic was access to food. They started a composting program, and they, through the design of their built environment, they found that they had these available spaces that were underutilized, and they started to utilize those spaces to grow food in the city. But depending on the climate, some of these climates, for example, in the Emirates are quite harsh and aren't really amenable to growing food outdoors. So in some places, the urban agriculture may have to find ways to grow closer to where people live, but not necessarily outside. So there's many different, I feel like, opportunities for building the green economy through addressing these types of startups that could support more urban food growing in the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question and the answer. There are a couple of questions from Hemsing.
Okay, thank you, Derek. I'm Hemsing Harunak from Mauritius, but working with a network of civil society organizations of the small island developing states. Well, my question to Kirsten is, I have got in fact two questions. It's related to the Eco Compass educational programs, right? My question is, these programs are to be handed over or to be handled by whom and to whom? And then is it going to be a continuous process or just a one-go exercise as undertaken by certain authorities in most countries? Just these authorities, they use this one-go meeting to show that they have consulted all the stakeholders. This is one. The second one is, you know, we are from the small island developing states, very small islands, and water is becoming a very, very good big issue where survival is at stake. We would like to hear from you, Kirsten, about how can we help with this situation for the small island developing states. I have noted the issue that the example of the Nile River in Egypt, but at least you have got a big river. But in the small islands, we depend only on rain. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your questions. To answer the first question about the Eco-Compass training materials and who uses them, and is the process continuous or is it just one meeting? The way that we've developed the materials is typically to be implemented through a partnership with an academic partner, typically a school, a university in most cases. So the materials are customized, the partnerships are formed, local government, different urban service provider, data providers, and ideally the course then is repeated. So the professors or the instructors teach the course typically with the first 1 or 2 years with a strong partnership with EcoCity builders just to get things up and running, and to together find the best set of materials. Training of trainers is sort of the first thing that we do, and but then the course can become a repeated offering of the university. So it gets, if it's successful and if everyone agrees, it is then embedded and offered again and again, and as it is offered again, different people participate. Some people remain as core participants sort of outside of the academic setting, but then the research can shift to other neighborhoods, to other systems, so it's then becomes this iterative process. So that's to, in part, answer your first question. The second question about water, I would say I personally don't have the wonderful answer that you need for that, but what I would say is that through a process of discovery, of assessing what exactly the citizens and residents are using water for, at what amount, where the water that they are using is coming from, and just getting a picture of water use in whatever area that we're talking about is really helpful to bring everybody together and sort of understand the picture of water, and then from there start to brainstorm what interventions or what options are there together, and then to test some of those out. Rainwater capture, storage, cisterns, reuse of water would be very important, I feel like, in a place that you're talking about. And to embed that, though, in the everyday lives of the water users, which are the citizens. So that's where this participatory process can be really helpful. And it starts to spread. I'll say, like, in a smaller, especially secondary city, once something like this starts going, then other people start talking about it. So it's even just through word of mouth. If something is working, they tell other people, and it sort of then becomes a process of, well, I want to, I would like to try this next, or I have another idea. It's very, I would say, very integral to the success is that it starts small, and you find out what doesn't work and what does work, and then seek to replicate what does work. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question and the answer. There are a number of good questions here from Peter King. from the Institute for Global Environmental Studies in Thailand. He's asked me to read the question questions on his behalf. Two are somehow related, I would say, and they relate to kind of what I would just consider societal kind of data and science, if you will, literacy. He's asking, do urban stakeholders really understand the Sankey diagrams in terms of translating them into solutions? And somehow related, I think, a second question, does the terminology of eco-cities, front-runner cities, smart cities, etc., confuse rather than converge city development towards sustainability? So I think in both cases it's a question of relating the kind of the great work that we're hearing about to the average person in the urban context. Any thoughts for Peter's questions?
Yes. The first question about do the participants understand the Sankey diagrams? I would say yes. And I know that just from a first glance, they look abstract, and I feel the same way. However, going through the process of developing this with the participation of the citizens and the households, they become very attuned to these diagrams, and when they see their own consumption patterns reflected back through the diagram, and these are typically, say, people in Baba or other informal areas with very low literacy typically. They almost than more developed or more highly educated groups, they get it because they're very much in tune with the rhythms and flows of resources because they're so it's so basic for them. So in our experience, when they see the diagram that they've helped put together through answering the questions about the demands, understanding where their water is coming from or energy, where it's going to, I feel like they do get it, and it is useful. And I can point to a number of examples through our work of that. Then with the cacophony that you spoke of in the second part of the question, of all of the different ways to talk about where we need to be headed with cities, sustainable, smart, green, eco-city, I completely agree. It is very confusing, and I'm really not sure what the best answer is in the wider lens of trying to coordinate everybody's efforts towards the goal. So all I know is that just from our work, since we've been doing this for about 25 years and have been talking about eco-cities for about that long or longer, we try to make the linkages to all these different approaches, but we try to also explain how we might be different than some of the others. Say a smart city might be more focused on using technology, and we might say that our approach is a little bit less technology focused. We do integrate and use it quite a bit, but it's maybe more bottom up and people oriented. So that's about the best I can do to answer that question, but I agree. I think it is distracting.
But thank you, Kirsten, for giving the answer to Peter's questions. So with that, I think I need to bring the webinar to an end. Tremendous gratitude, Kirsten, for giving us this rich webinar. And of course, I'd like to thank everyone who's been on the call. Appreciate your participation. We very much appreciate your questions, and we hope to speak to you again in the near future.